I understand, Steve is out of town, as I understand his schedule today, and he kind of asked me to stand in as the moderator on one of these periodic conversations that are sponsored by the Private Planning Practice Division. I'm sure I won't do quite as good a job as Steve. I hope you'll be patient with me. Today's subject is focused on the role of some subcontractors and contractors, and Stephen has entitled it, "How Can Prime Contractors and Subconsultants Work More Effectively Together?" For the most part, the Private Practice Division is comprised of smaller firms and some government clients. There are a handful of moderate size and very large firms. I consider my own firm to be moderate size. Offering their views on a variety of topics are our two guests for today. Robert McHaney, who's with the Goodman Corporation, and he is the chair of the Transportation Planning Division. With him is Divya Gandhi, who is with AECOM. And she's a board member on the Transportation Planning Division. I myself am with GAI Consultants. Among the three firms, I would consider GAI a moderate-sized firm. I believe the Goodman Corporation is probably a moderate-sized firm. AECOM, as you know, is one of the largest engineering and planning companies in the world, not just the country. The three of us all work together both as prime contractors and as subconsultants in various occasions. We've assembled a list of questions or topics that we think are worth discussing, and you are welcome, as typically is the case during these Friday afternoon sessions, to voice a comment, to ask a question of your own, to interact with the panel or with other guests that have dialed in. I am mindful that we have for today 25 people that are registered to participate in this session. So it may be a little challenging to make sure we get to everybody that has dialed in if they have a question. So if I can, the first point on the screen that I'm sharing is, why might you become a subconsultant? What are the responsibilities of the subconsultant if we make that decision? Divya, Robert, would you like to comment or add other introductory remarks of your own, please?
Sure, I'll pass it to Divya first. Ladies first.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Owen. Hello, everyone. I'm joining in from Oakland, California, so it is good afternoon here. Not sure if it's late afternoon for most of the folks joining in, but yes, very happy to be here and be a part of this conversation. I can give a quick introduction. My name is Divya Gandhi. As Owen said, I am a transportation planner and a project manager at AECOM in our Oakland office, and I mainly support the rail and transit side of business here. Previously, I worked extensively on multimodal planning projects, safety planning, parking, and with time have done a lot of project management of these projects as well. Overall, I love seeing the big picture of projects, but at the same time, really like getting into the technical side and the technicalities and doing the actual project work as well. And a little bit about my engagement with the APA, which has been very fun and rewarding. Mostly engaged with the Transportation Planning Division here with Robert. Lastly, in one of my last roles, I was co-leading the development of our TPD's State of Transportation Planning report in 2022. So yes, I've really enjoyed being on the board and working on the board. And yeah, I'm the incoming chair of programs. So definitely looking for more conversations and partnerships like this. With that, I will get to the question, why become a subconsultant? As prime consultants leading all kinds of big and small projects, we're always looking to partner, have teaming partner opportunities with various subconsultants. One of the good big reasons as to why one looks for subconsultants is really an opportunity for subconsultants to have access to large projects that require a specialized team of experts. So that is one very big reason as to why one looks for subconsultants, and ends up being an excellent teaming opportunity for a sub who might be a smaller sized firm as compared to a larger firm, which can lead as a prime and sometimes can also be a sub. One of the other, big reasons as to why being a subconsultant is a great opportunity is that it allows you to participate in like a good wide range of projects from different industries and sectors. And that kind of diversification can really be beneficial for a subconsultant's growth and stability, and really expanding your existing portfolio and the work that someone does, or an organization leads. One of the good benefits sometimes ends up being that the prime contractor often ends up taking the majority of the administrative tasks, such as the contract negotiation, doing the real talks with the client. And that's when it kind of frees up resources for the subconsultant to be really able to focus on the work and the specialized part of the project that they're specifically leading. And I think lastly, it's really an opportunity to access new markets, partnering with a prime who kind of operates at a larger scale and in various geographical areas can really help expand your reach and potentially help tap newer client bases as well. I'll stop there and pass it on to Robert. But yeah, those are some thoughts on that front. Thank you.
Okay. That was nice, Divya. Thank you so much. Yeah, can you hear me okay, Divya?
Robert, can you speak up
Yes.
just a little bit louder?
You bet I can.
Thank you.
How's that? Is that better?
That's good for me. Yeah.
Well, I'm from Texas, so we're loud, so maybe I should be a little bit louder. It's
Yeah,
late.
don't be so shy. Right.
Friday afternoon, right? You know how you can tell if someone's from Texas. They'll tell you within the first 30 seconds of the introduction. So yeah, Robert McHaney, I am the chair to the transportation division. We were asked to do some cross-division collaboration. I appreciate everybody here. Hi, Carla. Carla and I are working on something else together. So anyway, and there's Deborah. Cool. So so that's my APA hat. I also am a chair of the Texas Policy Transportation Committee here as well. So that's part of establishing APA's policies within our legislature. So both the local and a federal level, if you will. I've been in the industry for about 20 years and been working as a sub-consultant and also as a consultant, as a prime consultant, excuse me, for that time. As my career grew, I started becoming more of a project principal and building teams and thinking through teams and also evaluating whether or not to join teams. And so I have a little bit of experience this, but I do want to foreshadow with that we have a firm of about 30 people. So Divya comes from a firm of, I don't know, 1 million. I think it's like 70,000. I have no idea what AECOM is now, Divya. It's like 70,000, I think. And so we're coming with much different perspectives. We have just enough. I think that Goodman Corporation has just enough size to prime some contracts, but mostly if we're on some of the larger muni or state contracts, we're going to be subcontracting, right? So why become a sub-consultant? My mentor, who has passed, he at his retirement party, he said, people like to do business with people they like. And I really held on to that. And I was in my 20s when I heard this, and it just stuck. And it's true. And I think if you think about sub-consulting, you get the opportunity as a small private practice to work with other people in the industry and on a job that you may not likely win on your own. And what better way to, I guess, befriend somebody or from a professional standpoint than to work with them and to work on a common goal. I think when we're working on a common goal, especially, we're in the transportation space. I know there's people here with different spaces, but we all become a planner because we want to make the world a better place. However that looks is the planning part. But I think if we are working side by side trying to make the world a better place, whether it's a small community or a large interstate freeway removal idea, right? Whatever it is, I think when we do that together, there is a bonding that takes place, that's a professional bonding, I should say, that goes beyond just, hey, I met you at a conference, or I met you at a, whatever, because you're doing something together and you have financial ties together. So I think becoming a sub-consultant, that's one advantage. Another advantage is that it gives your firm some work experience to build upon, some qualifications to build upon, to then maybe go lead that piece of work later, right? Depending on what you're doing. I think that's a real strong advantage of becoming a sub-consultant as well.
Let's talk for a moment, if we can, about your responsibilities in the role as a prime, and then your responsibilities as a sub. I realize as we're having this conversation, my firm, Robert, is probably a good deal larger than yours. I am an economist as well as a planner, and despite the fact that my firm rarely is a subcontractor, although we do it, I am always a subcontractor because I have a highly unusual specialty. So that I fill out teams in a very discrete and specific way. So my roles, my responsibilities are also typically preordained in terms of how I'm going to participate. Would you like to talk for a moment about, how you see the various responsibilities of the lead consultant, the prime versus the subs, and how that process gets managed? And it can be very complicated. I am very focused in my work. As a project manager, you have very, very broad encompassing responsibilities, right?
You want me to go first, David? This time? I'll go first this time.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's two pieces to it. First piece is the pursuit, right? The business pursuit, whatever it is. And the prime's responsibility is to build the team, and to build the team that best fits the scope of work and is going to be the most competitive. I think that prime, when I built teams, I look for a few things. One, do they add technical value? Right? I mean, we need value. Do they have local presence? Do they have political contacts? Do they have things that add value to the team? And then build that team and ask them to be teaming partners. And then on the flip side, from a sub-consultant standpoint, as I pitch our firm as a sub-consultant, the first question that I ask myself is, what is our value proposition for that prime consultant? And I'll use AECOM as an example because I've approached AECOM to be on teams. AECOM has 70,000 people working for their firm. So what value proposition can I offer AECOM? I think you have to think through that. Every firm and every job is going to be slightly different, but I think that, what can we add? And likely what it is for us is it's local contacts. For some of the larger, big A&E firms, if you worked, in your, I've been in the Austin, Houston market for 15 years, and our firm's been here 40 years. That has advantages. And I think that for an AECOM. Now, if it's a different firm, maybe it's a little bit smaller firm with 100 folks, maybe we can add some technical or bench, right? Or maybe we hired someone, we just recently hired someone that's just a whiz at safety analysis, and that's a really specialized skill. And so now that person can maybe be the value proposition, if that makes sense, from a sub-consultant standpoint. Divya?
Thank you, Robert. Thinking about roles and responsibilities, I agree with everything Robert said, everything about thinking about the value proposition, what is a smaller sized firm really adding to a giant sized firm, and what is one really bringing to the table, which is where it starts. Talking a little generally, just adding a little bit to what Robert said, roles of a prime consultant can, really entail the overall project management, being the real liaison that the client constantly communicates with and interacts with. There's a lot of negotiations and administration involved. So that is also something that the prime consultant actively takes on. And then, of course, selecting a good mix of sub-consultants, really choosing which team to partner with. A lot of times when a big pursuit comes out and there is a deep study done of the scope, the first thing that we do when we think about teaming partners and sub-consultants to work with is really understanding the scope deeply and matching what part of the scope can be covered. So that is a perspective that one really goes with, and that is that process of identifying specific roles and responsibilities. And a lot of times what ends up governing who does how much is the capacity of the team. Like, yes, ACOM or any larger firm for that matter might have big teams, but a lot of times teams are already burdened with work, a lot of backlog. So there's always a really good opportunity there to bring in sub-consultants, or sometimes for a larger firm to also act as a sub-consultant and have another firm lead the project. Again, coming in solely as an issue of like capacity at that time, how much the team can take on, and just adding and flagging what Robert said again, highlighting that local context and teams that are locally present and have real good, relationships with the public agency that we're hoping to serve, again, ends up being a big plus when thinking about roles and responsibilities and thinking about who one partners with. So local knowledge and good relationships is always a plus.
Yeah, let me respond to that group of comments this way, or ask my own question based on those comments. Both of you are speaking from a transportation perspective, right? While you may be private and of different size, you are focused on transportation, which seems to suggest to me that perhaps there are in addition to some of the local personal relationships, there may be specific skills that you're particularly looking for that are universally more important at a local level, perhaps, than others. For example, I mean, if you're engaging in public participation, it may very well be that there's a local network that you want to tap in. So my question then is really, are there specific skills, certain types of consultants that you may want to pull into your umbrella, or pull under your umbrella as part of your work? I mean, that may be beneficial to the people that are on the phone.
Yeah, definitely public engagement, community engagement. That's one that is, I think, is a localized. I mean, you could probably work out of different markets, but you probably need to stay close by. One, just the travel and getting to know folks and conversations. So I think that's one. Any government relations, certainly. I use that somewhat loosely, depending on what level of government relations is one, right? And then for me, I really like local traffic engineers. I think that helps because then they know the roads, they've driven them. You don't have someone out of, here in Austin, you wouldn't have somebody out of Chicago doing it. I mean, you certainly could, but if they've never seen it, driven it, experienced it, then it makes it a little bit more challenging. So those are some of the skill sets that I think tend to be a little bit more advantageous locally. How about Divya? How about you guys?
Yes, agreed with everything that you mentioned, Robert. Definitely specific skills, local knowledge, community, any tasks that need to do with like a lot of community engagement, stakeholder engagement, and also engagement with local organizations that are really very active in the communities. So definitely having partners locally helps in running those kinds of tasks and making sure that we're really bringing along the community as we are moving forward with projects.
Yeah, I would add one other is we just had a meeting actually with one of our sub-consultants, land use planning. Having someone with local knowledge of land use planning is another skill set that's I would say is probably going to add some value to larger firms that are more multinational or national firms.
No need for local economists. Okay, so again, highly specialized. How many angels dance on the top of a pinhead? I am a specialist. Well, I think that's important because a firm like AECOM obviously can within its many offices find all these skills. So, if our smaller firms that want to try to get all the benefits that you've articulated, the exposure, the knowledge, the personal relationships, it's worth thinking about what that value proposition really means. I mean, that's a good set of words, but in terms of applying it to this discussion, value proposition is what is it I do, and what is it I can do perhaps in an excellent way that distinguishes or helps to distinguish the team that I'm serving, right? Along those same lines, AECOM, I'm guessing, like my firm, we have very extraordinarily complex contracts. Is that a fair observation? I don't know about you, Robert. I mean, I've been a sub to AECOM, and it's 200 pages of paperwork. That is, in fact, part of it. The contracts are complex, perhaps much more often more complicated than what a small firm would have. While we really can't conveniently work on a handshake, there are some contracting responsibilities in my mind that are key obligations resulting in key processes that are a part of that set of responsibilities. With one of the challenges often being insurance, which we know in our PPD division we've talked about before. So would you talk about those kinds of things in terms of responsibilities and relationships, please?
Yeah, be happy to. So I guess, Divya, you didn't go off mute, so I'll start on that.
Oh, sure.
I think it's a significant disadvantage to private practice and small businesses contracting. If you're not a lawyer and or have contracting experience, and a lawyer that deals in contracts, I think that we take on, and I think that we take on more risks than we probably know we're taking on, for sure. I think that we still have a little bit of a handshake. I think when you get into working with the WSPs and AECOMs of the world, it gets a little bit more complex, because then you've got a contract that's even longer. And I went to planning school, so it's challenging to come out and help run a business without that legal counsel. So I think that just as a thought, I'm not necessarily diverting your question, but I think as that could be something that the private practice could look at as some sort of shared, contracting reviewer or something like that. That's an interesting thought that I just had. And same with, especially with private practice, because that's challenging. And so the other thing is, to follow up on your question, we follow we use a lot of federal money. So there's federal guidelines and contracts with that. And we just need to follow the federal templates, if you will. But like on one of them, I mean, because very few people actually read them. One of them is you shouldn't be printing off paper, right, on this contract.
Right.
So, I mean, did anyone read section, as I see an associate printing off the report, right? And it's like in section 23, or another one that gets us, Owen, a lot of our associates, they're like, well, can I send this document? Can I send this work product to the client? Well, in most of our projects, the client, meaning the municipality or the state, they own that product that they just bought. And so, you got to be a little bit cautious with that as well. And then depending on what you're selling, right, if you have proprietary information, you need to really be cautious of who owns that work product in the end. So yeah, I think this is a very complex piece of subcontracting and a risk.
Robert, thank you for mentioning that. I hadn't thought about the work product. I myself am working for the Internal Revenue Service. I'm barely allowed to say that. If you were my sub, you couldn't say that. And so that's a very, very important point. Who owns, who controls, how do you share what it is you're doing? And if we have come from the public sector into the private sector, I'm not sure we necessarily have a full appreciation for how potentially difficult or challenging that is. So very much thank you for bringing that up. Divya, my experience has been is that AECOM, you know, is at the top of the apex in terms of contracting complexity. I'll pick on you for a moment because you have such a large company. You have extraordinary exposure in who you bring under your umbrella, right? So I'm sure you have certain standards that you have to maintain. With I know in this group one of the biggest is insurance. So would you like to discuss some of those challenges and building on what Robert said, please?
Totally, totally. Contracting processes, how it ends up differing for every time you interact with a different organization, for every different projects, or it is something that entails has legal aspects and really requires careful planning, clear documentation. I wouldn't even say communication, I would say over communicating with our legal partners. And ensuring that there's that compliance with relevant laws and regulations. To that end, certain ways in which contracting processes can be simplified, and as Robert mentioned, also like something that we can probably learn more about, as consultants and sub-consultants coming from the private side. We could, standardize contract templates and develop those templates that cover common terminologies and conditions. Like Robert said, I also went to planning school, so this is definitely a part of the business that I am learning more about every single day. Something else that ends up becoming really important is, really involving legal counsel early on in the contracting process to get really good guidance on legal requirements, reviewing of contracts, identifying potential risks, etc. And then I think lastly, defining, roles and responsibilities of all the parties involved in the contracting process and making a good team out of that. All of the representatives coming from different organizations can also be really helpful to ensure a smooth contracting process. But I agree, this is definitely something that we're all learning more about each day.
Well, you mentioned something else which I think heightens the complexity. I don't know of the many people that are on the phone that actually have planning backgrounds versus engineering backgrounds, right? This is a planning organization that we all belong to. So my guess is fundamentally everyone on here is a planner. In the planning business, your exposure is a little softer than it is in the engineering world. And yet the contracts that often define our obligations and contractual relationships are based on an engineering model. That heightens the complexity, I believe. Do you have any thoughts about that when you say you're learning and navigating? Is that one of those concerns or issues?
Oh, yeah, that was your question, Divya.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part, Owen.
Okay.
Repeat.
Could be. All right. Well, let's talk about the one thing that when we were organizing for this call, we spent some time discussing was the idea, especially for a new consultant that's entering private practice and trying to learn what the boundaries are of his or her own business model. Do we take on exclusive or non-exclusive responsibilities, as a sub that might have some key contribution? Back to the fact I'm an economist. I don't really want an exclusive role because a lot of people do what I do. You, as the prime, want to try to make sure your team is looking ahead in the same way you are. Would you both talk about that? I think that is not only an important topic, I think it's one that probably gives smaller firms some angst. And I know, Robert, you have some pretty strong.
Yeah, I just we actually are going after. We just submitted a bid, and in the RFP it said that the prime contractor may not ask the subcontractor to play an exclusive role. Now, it doesn't mean that the subcontractor can't offer. So there's some complexity to this, I think, that, and some strategy. If you have a very strong value proposition And let me give you an example. There may be an agency that wants to hire your small firm. Like they just want to, but you don't have the capacity to prime that contract. Well, you've just added a lot of value because that, people talk, that'll get around, and all of a sudden they know they, as in the prime, need to add you on their firm. Now, some people can use that to their advantage and say, hey, I will go exclusive on your contract. And I want to make sure that you give me work. that's, and I say that I don't necessarily do that. I want to put that out there, especially since we're being recorded. I don't know where that sits in the AICP code of ethics either. Maybe someone on here could talk about that a little bit more. But I know this is discussed, exclusive versus non-exclusive. I personally think non-exclusive is important because you get on more teams as a sub-consultant, and the likelihood that you're going to get some work, is there because you've increased your chances. All of a sudden I'm on, AECOM's team, WSB's team, whoever, but I'm very clear with those agents or those firms, hey, I'm on multiple teams. So part of that may be, well, I might not get invited to the interview and or participate in the interview process because they don't want me or our firm, sharing any of the interview secrets, if you will. So, exclusivity gives us that advantage of, hey, I'm only going to go with you guys, and they'll bring you along the whole way. So I think there's some nuances to this. I also, on the exclusive part, I think that it just being exclusive, saying, look, I'm only going to be on your team. One, less burden. This is a pro for being exclusive. And then the other is that I think you develop a stronger relationship with that firm, right? It's like, hey, you know what? I like you guys. So you're the horse I'm going to go with. I think I'm allowed to say that, but that's what we're going to go with. And I think there's some benefit to that long term from a relationship standpoint.
Divya, your view on that, please.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. Yes, exclusive and non-exclusive, like Robert mentioned, ends up being a little bit of a complex decision when building teams, when negotiating teams, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of strategic thinking and business decisions that go with it. At the same time, involves a lot of negotiation with several parties on board. Sometimes there are exclusivity agreements that are enforced by the client, so which can be based on market needs or however teaming opportunities are out there. And a lot of times there are some sub-consultants that the primes really like, and so does the public agency or people on the clientele side. So there are sometimes sub-consultants that are liked so much for the work that they do that everybody wants them on their team. So that again, ends up being a negotiation and a conversation of who would they want to partner with and how do we, build the strongest team as we compete for something. So yes, it is definitely something complex, involves a lot of negotiation and conversation, and at the end of the day ends up being a strategic business decision of how one would want to move forward.
Can you teach me to be more likable? That's a requirement. I'm not a particularly likable.
Owen, we do have a comment in the chat box. And Amelia, if you want to unmute, you may to comment on it further. But in general, do large firms put out public RFPs to find sub-consultants, or is it more based on relationships?
That's a great question. If I may, unless Robert, you want to add something.
Go ahead, Divya. I'm good.
Excellent. So yes, large firms putting out public RFPs. So the moment an RFP is out, or an organization is anticipating for a proposal or a RFP to come out, based on market knowledge, based on the sub-consultants one has already worked with, there's that process of, the deep understanding of the scope and then matching sub-consultants or teaming partners that you already know about and you want to go out and form a team with. So that's one way of, going by what you already know. The other opportunity there is sub-consultants taking that, knowing of a particular project that they're interested in working on, and making that reaching out to those primes that might be thinking of leading that project and really making that connection, meeting in person, in-person meetings, a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of pitching of the work that has already been done by the organization and what is the kind of value that, can be brought to the table. A lot of times in advance of big RFPs, there are public agency initiatives like bigger agencies like I know SFMTA, LA Metro, they hold formal events where subs and primes can have a booth, can showcase and be really present. And that is really an opportunity for subs as well as primes and different organizations to come in and meet one another. And that can, kind of be categorized as a truly networking event where folks have an opportunity to get out there. On the other side, consultant primes, as coming in from big organizations, sometimes also end up holding events where there's an open invitation to all the subs that are local, national, that can come in. And again, ACOM as a larger organization and even other larger organizations might be holding such events in advance of a very big project to identify more teaming partners. So a lot of times on the private side, consulting firms do hold such events, have a little bit of food and beverage, and it's an evening. And lastly, I think that's like the fourth way, the informal way, the word of mouth. A lot of times transit agencies end up recommending certain sub-consultants and teams that, they would want. So they would want to be considered and things like that. So yes, one of the ways is maintaining a directory, but then constantly, going out and meeting people who are doing good work and getting to know the market like that.
Robert, you're going to add to that?
I'll definitely add to that. Divya, I appreciate all of that. But I will say I have never joined a team that from an event. Sorry, Divya. I know we have events and they're great. But I've never, and I think they're lovely. Don't get me wrong. I liked how you said food and beverage. But I've never joined a team without a relationship first. I think it's mostly we're in my space. It may be different for some others. So I appreciate that, Amelia. I think that getting to know what I call informally gatekeepers of these larger contracts that have these larger on-call contracts or bigger contracts that there's, a project manager or project principal that's developing the team would be, I would say, advantageous to your practice. And then to Jeff's question, yes, a lot of teams are certainly decided prior to the RFP release. So you need to be, understanding what's out there and then having those discussions. I think it's part of the business development strategy, whether you're going to, hey, I'm going to, subcontracting is going to be a thing that I do. And if so, then there's strategy to it, right? Understanding who the gatekeepers are, understanding when the projects are coming out, going to those events, so I think those are important. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to get invited to a team for value add relationships. And typically before the RFP, sometimes after or right around there, Jeff, but you're right. Most of the time it's before.
Well, I think that's an important thing. What you're both saying a little bit differently, which if I can try to tie it together, is obviously you as the sub, if you want to work with the bigger players, you need to have a certain set of technical skills, right? If you don't have the technical skills, whatever your interests are, you're not going to play through. So that's clearly a requirement, right? You, Divya, are describing certain business skills that need to be cultivated in order to get in the AECOM pool. And I think that Robert, you probably basically expect your subs to have an effective business model so that they can invoice, collect, and act responsibly, right? And then finally, you both are talking about different ways of marketing. Marketing is about circulating yourself, and it's also about participating in some of these events that Divya is identifying where you might actually bump into an opportunity. That's what I'm hearing if we were to distill it. So can you may agree or disagree with what I just said.
Gonna take the Jag? Okay, I was going to get it washed for you.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Amelia popped on here to say
You going
something.
out now?
Yeah, to check.
Someone needs to
Cleaners.
mute. Yeah, hi, I'm Amalia Cunningham. I am a sole proprietor. I agree. I think relationships are the way that people get contracts almost 100%. And I was just asking the question because I thought I heard one of the speakers say something about an RFP for subs. And that struck me because I've never seen such a thing or even heard of it. And then, to kind of agree with everyone else from the perspective of a small firm, sole proprietor in my case, the festivals and fairs are really not the way to, forge a solid working relationship. I think my impression has always been that there's something that large companies and large agencies are required to do as part of their diversity in supplier reporting, rather than where let's say, project managers are going to actually connect with the folks who could do some of the work for them.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Amelia. There is with our federal contracts and transportation, at least the planning contracts, most of them are federal, and or local. There's typically a small business enterprise or a disadvantaged business enterprise or a woman-owned business goal, which is, say it's 20%. And so the prime then needs to ensure that, I would say to be competitive, they'll get some points for this, to be, make sure that they fill the team with folks that have that designation. So I think that there is a strategic advantage in that just right off the bat. But I also think that the market's somewhat saturated as well. And I've always said that in planning, I believe if you do good work, you're likable. I do think that we have a positive sum game. There's an economic term for you there, Owen. I know it's still hard, but I think that will attract folks, and you will, add value to teams and to communities in the end.
The
a little
one
altruistic of me, but it's still, I got to hold to something, right?
I think the one thing that we haven't addressed using the letters, MBEs and WBEs. I think that might be kind of perhaps an inference I drew from Amelia's question. How important is that to these smaller firms in terms of making their associations with the larger primes? I know it's not a requirement for you, but how at the top of your priority is that in terms of figuring out who you're going to partner with?
I will say that from personal experience, we have a small business enterprise designation, and some that's accepted a little bit less than a minority business enterprise. I will say that I have good relationships with some gatekeepers, and they have taken me to lunch and it was great lunch. But at the end of the day, they said, look, the value that you add is not in the 21st, 22nd, 20, I used 20% earlier, between 20 and 25% of this contract, because that eats into theirs, right? Because now they're down to 75. So I think that I believe that it has a very important value. We're getting into politics a little bit here, so I'll be somewhat careful.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid that, honestly.
I know it's a political.
Yeah.
I think that, look, let's go back here. I'll say it this way. APA has, APA advocates for diversity, and this is a way to include and to create diverse teams. And so I would say I'll leave it at that. And I think that it's valuable because if you're not necessarily required, but the goal is, and there are boards and commissions that will say, what is this contract, when they go to award, what's their DBE participation? And, if it's meeting the goal, then you're likely going to, certainly if you're not meeting the goal, that could cause some problems with awarding. So when I say that is that I certainly wouldn't advocate or go out and try to get a DBE status just because, you're trying to work the system. But I would certainly, if you are a woman sole proprietor, I would definitely go get a WBE certificate from your certifying body, your local certifying body. Be like a city or an MPO or a COG or some sort of certifying body. And there's different rules and regulations per state of how much your net assets can be, and what they consider net assets and so forth. So if you're already in that position or you're a minority and you're owning the business, then yeah, I would absolutely do that. But I don't think I would go and try to, find a way to do it. If that makes sense.
Divya,
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
you're agreeing. Okay.
Totally. Something, yeah, definitely agree with everything that was said, and something that we kind of keep an eye on when thinking about contracts, depending upon where the funding is coming from, there are these certain requirements that you want to have a certain percentage of this DBE women-owned businesses. A lot of times it's small businesses. A lot of times it's veteran-owned businesses. So just depending on where the funding is actually coming from, which kind of ends up determining that. So when forming teams and looking for teaming partners, for us, it is really important to be aware of who's out there and who has that certification, who's doing the work that can, that in a way that it can complement the team. And lastly, opportunities like this end up being very advantageous for someone who's trying to get a foot in the door. So that is also something that we're always conscious of, aware of. And it just ends up being a good opportunity for someone trying to break into the market. So just trying to think about it from all the sides here.
Well, I am reminded that we have about 10 minutes left, and for those that are dialing in and listening, this actually was not a practice session. We did acknowledge certain topics that we wanted to speak about, and those are the ones that are on the screen. As my last question, which is not really on the board, would either of you have some parting words that you might share in terms of, wow, this should have been a question and we really didn't think about it? Is there some very, very compelling issue? I think we covered a lot of, things that were helpful for me. I have some takeaways.
Oh, and we do have a couple of other questions in the chat as well.
Okay. I'm waiting for you to speak up when they come in. So good for you.
No problem. One is, how do local, smaller consultants protect their budget and not get minimized by the prime?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take that because we're a little bit smaller consultant project, our team, Divya. That's so. I don't actually, when I'm a teaming member, depending on the size of the contract, I don't necessarily even put that in as it's a win, but it's a win if it comes, because I feel like it's kind of a, you want it, the prime won it, and then you got to win it and then you got to win more work from the prime. So I try to, this is a I would say downside to subbing a lot, is that you're going to have a really difficult time with controlling staffing, hours, and projections, because okay, great, you just won an RFP or you just won a contract with a prime, but they may give you 10-20% or zero, right? And so I would say, Mitch, it's a good question. I would stay connected. We're a sub right now to a large firm, and I've pinged the project manager several times, like, hey, what can we do for you? What's going on? And you need anything? Enough not to be annoying, but enough to, I think they have like 6 people on their team, right? So like, I don't want to get lost, if that makes sense. So that's how I would try to do that. But it's tough. I have a friend that owns a small business here, and she actually became a prime with TxDOT, and it was a $5 million contract. And TxDOT didn't give a work order for 6 months. But can you imagine your small firm? And she had like 3 or 4 people. Can you imagine your small firm winning a $5 million on-call contract and then not getting anything? So, and then maybe get something after that, right? Like that's the I would say definitely a challenge with subbing, especially on some of these larger contracts.
So no magic bullets.
No, there's not. No, I mean,
okay. mean, I
Work is
think that
toil
was kind
still,
of the-
right,
yeah.
Owen? I mean.
Well, I think you're right. I believe also the primes do have some responsibility, and I think that this often goes unnoticed. Is if the role is important, but it's also small for the sub. I don't know that it's necessarily fair to burden that sub with all the proposal preparation. Now, that's a personal view. I don't know that it's widely shared. So I just offer that up as my comment to that question.
Yeah.
Divya, do you want to add more here?
I think it was pretty much completely covered. I think something that comes to mind was just the whole thing when you're part of a larger contract, the processes can be slow, review times can be longer than expected. So really keeping a good tab on the schedules, and also making sure we're not going away from the scope. So the whole problem of a scope creep coming in. So that is something that I think ends up being really important to protect the budget as allotted, to kind of stick to the roles and responsibilities and the identified scope that we started with.
Corey, is there another question? I think you indicated there was.
Yes, we have one other question, and it's kind of an ethical question. Jeff Ray asked, has anyone been an exclusive with a prime that was not selected for the project, but the client asked them to be a sub to a different prime?
I have. What about my panelists?
Non-exclusive prime, not select only the rest of the city. Oh, yeah.
Is that a problem? Is it a problem? How
we
would
weren't
you?
a prime,
I think
but we
it's not
definitely.
just whether you got it or not. Is how did you handle the situation? Is probably really the question.
That's right. Yeah. We have been. I don't think there's two parts to this, right? So it's a little bit double barreled. The first part is have we been a prime, and then did we get married with another prime, if you will? I don't think that the first part has happened, but we've absolutely been married with other primes but we have two contracts. If that makes sense. The city will just come hire us for a certain aspect of the plan and hire the prime. And that's just that. The city just, how do we handle it? We just worked with the city directly. So I don't think that necessarily that combination that Jeff is talking about has happened that I can think of.
Divya, you and I'll share how I would handle that myself. Divya?
Yeah, I think something on maybe not the exact same thing, but something on different lines that has happened with us is just ensuring a strategic decision that was kind of made to go in as a sub, and then the client, well, once selected, I think the client really came back to us to kind of let us know that they were really hoping for us to be the prime instead of the sub. But again, that's the example that comes to mind, and ends up It was a conversation, but yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Well, I have had exactly that situation as I understood it. Another group, a prime, and various people were selected as opposed to the team that I was a sub on. And I was approached directly by the city, which was the client, asking if these specialized services could be provided. Of course, I wanted to do it. My inclination is I had obligated myself to the other prime, and it required hopefully a very, very tacit communication and approval and allowance for me to do this. So I picked up the phone, called the prime, explained what had happened, and said, hey, are you okay with this, or is this going to cause you an extreme, make you extremely uncomfortable? And they acquiesced and said, fine, we appreciate you being on our team, and if this is going to work for you, please pursue it. So it can happen. And again, I think it really has a lot to do with the nature of the work you're offering up. So that's kind of my comment there. Anything else, Corey? I hope that makes sense. It's simple courtesy. It's not really, it's a business decision coupled with courtesy.
Right. Oh, and I have
No,
3, because I actually have to pick up my child today that I just got a text.
Okay.
I have another child that's sick, so we get charged by the minute if you're late. Just FYI for anybody that has their kid in
Yeah.
childcare, make sure you're on time. So if
Thank
you wouldn't mind if I could give some final thoughts,
Yes.
if that's all right, and maybe as well. You know, I thought of this as we were chatting. You know, another really big advantage to developing relationships with these prime contractors as smaller firms is if your goal is to sell your firm, and maybe everybody here loves being a sole proprietor and doing what they're doing, and that's great. But there's some that certainly build firms to sell it. I think that's a good opportunity to show off your skill set and the value add to the firm, because these larger firms are likely looking to acquire some of the smaller firms that provide, like, you know, like ours, that provide a little bit different skill set and market share, et cetera. So I'd forgotten to mention that earlier on why become a sub-consultant. If
That's a valuable comment. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very valuable. Yes.
Yeah. I just think about relationship building, right? And it may not be where you want to sell your firm today, but, you know, 4 or 5 years and you've developed some good, strong working relationships. I think that's, you know, I think folks will notice that. So I you know, as planners, so my final thoughts on this is that as planners, we're social scientists. Whatever we're doing and whatever field you're in, whatever specialty you're planning in. You know, some of us are not just all, Owen, I know you're an economist, so I say that with which is social science as part of it. So anyway, point is though, is, you know, we are, you know, trying to create, I saw your Divya, your background there said delivering a better world, right? And I think a lot of our core values and principles in most firms that I work with, both from a priming and a subbing, has that same core value. And that's I like that, delivering a better world or to create a better place, et cetera. And I think doing that together as a team, one of my roles is integration. I think that we have very complex, challenging problems in our society. We know this. I think we could probably all agree on that. And so that takes a team of professionals, and to think that your firm, whether you're a prime or not, has all those professionals to do that is probably a little naive. I think that having other professionals to help you develop those sound solutions is really important. So that's why I like teaming, and it allows for companies still to create some autonomy. So we're all not just, you know, one firm, if that makes sense. We get to have some uniqueness while we're doing that.
Thank you. I have your contact information on the screen. I hope it's correct. If anybody wants to follow up with you, I suspect you'll be gracious and share your time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Just to share final parting thoughts here. You know, as primes, as bigger organizations, we're always looking to partner, always looking for teaming partners to really lead projects and build strong teams. So a lot of times big agencies, big organizations also don't have the capacity. So that is something to always keep in mind, and always think about the value addition. Strong working relationships, just to really highlight that again. A lot of times we go in as a prime, but then there's another project coming in, and because of those strong working relationships, there's a negotiation where there's someone else who can lead this, but then you have an opportunity to lead this project. So the market is big. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in our field, and just partnering and being teaming partners is how we can build stronger teams. And lastly, just like Robert said, what's on my background, we're all working together to make this world a better place to live in. We're all professionals of the built environment, so aligning core values, again, as Robert mentioned, is something that leads to really good, long-lasting relationships. So that's kind of the perspective to move forward with.
Well, Corey, unless there are any other obvious questions, it seems to me we had the questions. I hope they were answered the way that the person posing the question intended or was interested. If we don't have any more questions, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank Robert and Divya, whose addresses are here. They can be contacted for more information. If you had a problem with the way the session was handled in particular, take that up with Steve or Corey. I want to thank Corey for his technical assistance today. Without it, this presentation and discussion would have been impossible. I did spend more time talking to Robert than Divya before the session, and I am absolutely sure if you had additional questions, and Divya indicates she would as well, please feel free to follow up. Are there any very parting comments? Because I think that Steve really wanted to make sure I managed the time, since everyone is good enough to put this on their calendars in this window. If there's a burning desire to talk, I'm sure Corey wouldn't cut us off. Okay. I take silence as a no, and I will say goodbye and thank each of you for spending some time with us this afternoon. Thank you. Corey, is that an official sign off?
That sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you all. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.